Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's afternoon keynote session at CAR MBS 2020. This afternoon's keynote session is sponsored by the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. During the session, all audience members will be muted to ensure a quality user experience for everyone participating. If you have any other questions regarding the virtual MBS experience, please feel free to ask those questions at the information desk in the virtual lobby. Please also take a moment to visit the virtual exhibits in the exhibit hall, and if you'd like to earn CEU or PDH credits for participating in CAR MBS, please visit our MBS page on our website at www.cargroup.org to access the registration link for CEUs or PDHs. Once again, thank you for joining us today. I'm pleased to welcome session moderator, CAR President and CEO, Carla Balow.
Thank you, Katie, very much. I'm so excited to be able to host another wonderful keynote speaker this afternoon. I have the pleasure to introduce Arianne Walker, who's the Chief Evangelist for Alexa Auto of Amazon. And in this role, she helps educate automakers and device makers about voice. Prior to that, she was head of automotive industry strategy at Oracle Data Cloud, where she helped automotive marketers discover and implement the best possible audience strategies for their marketing efforts. Her automotive background actually began at J.D. Power, where she spent a dozen years providing direction on automotive marketing industry trends. Before getting into the automotive space, she did research for colleges and universities to help support administrative planning and decision-making. So an unusual background for CAR MBS, Arianne has a bachelor's degree in anthropology and an MA and PhD in higher education and organizational change from UCLA. Welcome, Arianne.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're joining us, and I'll hand the baton over to you for your presentation.
Wonderful. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that everybody can see the slides. I'm going to make sure, since I do, yeah, my sound is on, so hopefully everybody will be able to hear everything. Yeah, so excited to be here. Such a pleasure. And today I am going to talk to you a little bit about Alexa Auto, but also more broadly voice in the car, and sort of where the industry is headed, what some of the challenges are that we face, and how we really think we can solve some of those hard problems. So as a starting point, I think it would be really useful for everyone for me to level set a little bit with some of the data from the industry itself. And that is that we've seen from VoiceBot AI data that over half of US adults have used a voice assistant in the car. So there's already a fair amount of exposure and usage. At least people have tried it in the car, which is great, and a really nice starting point. And in fact, we see that further into the future, Navigant Research actually projects that voice assistants will be embedded into about 90% of all vehicles sold globally by 2028. So there's going to be even more exposure and more usage. And so it's really important for all of us to make sure that we're providing a great experience for those customers. And that's one of the reasons why at Amazon we wanted to bring Alexa into the car to have this great experience. But it's not the only reason, not just because of where the industry is headed and that the desire, but also because we heard from our own customers the disappointment that they felt when they had to leave Alexa at home when they walked out the front door in the morning. And so we wanted to figure out a way to bring Alexa into the car to meet their needs, and because that's really the way we operate at Amazon. We really listen to the customer. In addition to that, we also pay a lot of attention to data, not just those anecdotes. And we've seen from industry data that perhaps a little bit less so right now in these times, but typically, especially in the US, that the average US adult spends over 50 minutes, 50 minutes in the car every day, commuting to work, to school, wherever they're going. And that's a lot of time in the vehicle that people want to be productive and be entertained, but need to keep their hands on the wheel and eyes on the road, particularly if you're the driver. So we thought this was a great solution, right? Voice is the obvious solution to help with that. But the challenge with that is that we've seen, again, from industry data, that built-in voice recognition systems have been the #1 complaint, according to JD Power, year after year after year, even though we've had voice recognition software in vehicles for quite some time. So we wanted to understand this challenge a little bit more deeply from the voice of the customer, from those consumers. And so we actually worked with JD Power to do a deep dive on this. And they surveyed over 5,000 consumers across the US to understand a little bit more about what the challenges were and what the expectations really were of voice in the car. And so I thought I'd share some of that industry data with you today. And it's important to make sure that I'm really clear that this is not data from Alexa users only, right? It's across the industry. So any kind of voice assistant they may be using, those folks are all included in this data. So it's really an industry level view, which I think is really useful for thinking about the future of voice and what needs to happen. So let's take a look at some of those challenges that we see with that traditional voice recognition systems that typically come in the vehicles. We asked about this and gathered a whole bunch of verbatims or quotes from the customers who actually responded to the survey through JD Power. And while I'm not going to show you all the quotes, I thought I'd show you a few to give you a flavor around 4 key areas that we heard about in terms of those challenges. So first and foremost, we heard a number of complaints and issues and challenges around the number of features and the breadth of features that somebody could use with their voice recognition system in the vehicle. So we heard things like it could use more features. We've got this lovely quote up here that does talk about Alexa, right? It doesn't have all the features like Alexa. But of course, we heard this across the board with other voice assistants as well. You know, that they really just wanted to be able to do all of the things that they could do in their lives outside the car, wanted to be able to do those things inside the car as well. The second area of challenge, if you will, is simply how difficult those voice recognition systems can be to use. And we heard commentary like, it never works, it doesn't understand me no matter how slow or how normal I speak, it just does a poor job. That general level of frustration came out very, very clearly as a challenge. Related to that, but a little bit more specific, that JD Power pulled out as another theme that I think is really important, is this challenge around having to say very specific things, often in a specific order, using specific terms or proper language to get the system to do what you want it to do. And when you think about that challenge, it's almost like having to memorize a menu and then say things in that certain order without being able to see the menu. That is a tough thing for people to do, for human beings to do, and a real challenge with those traditional voice recognition systems. The last theme that honestly didn't come up as often as the others, but it came up often enough to point it out, and that was that those traditional systems are often outdated and very challenging to update. You know, we're doing a little bit better job of that in the industry with over-the-air updates, but you know, for many customers, they, you know, a lot of the information like around navigation and those kinds of things are set at the time that the car is actually produced. And so by the time you set foot in the car on the showroom floor, much of that information is already outdated. So we really felt like using the cloud technology and a voice assistant that, you know, lives in the cloud and can be updated and uses natural language and all of that great technology, machine learning, AI, can really help solve a lot of these problems. But you don't want to take it from us. We wanted to find out from consumers, again, across the board, about how the experiences have been with those voice assistants in those different integrations. So we actually asked through JD Power about people's satisfaction with these different types of implementations. And I'm going to go through each of these, so you don't have to try and absorb all the data all at once. But I'll start with sort of a baseline, if you will, for satisfaction with in-home voice assistants, just to level set there. And what we saw is on JD Power's standard 10-point scale, the experience with in-home voice assistants received a satisfaction score of 7.43. So not bad, but certainly there's still room for improvement. Customers' expectations continue to grow as those experiences get better. And so that may be one of the reasons why that satisfaction level isn't higher. But also, we continue to make advancements in voice technology. And so expect that the experience will continue to get better and better across the board with whatever voice assistant people may be using at home. So in comparison to that in-home voice assistant satisfaction, we'll take a look at those experiences in the car, specifically with cloud-based voice assistants. Going from the left over there, the cloud-based phone projection. So that is where you have an app on the phone that can actually project into the infotainment system of the vehicle. That sort of experience received a score just over 7 on that same 10-point scale. A cloud-based aftermarket device where you bring the aftermarket device into the vehicle and use your phone for that cloud connectivity, got a better score and actually is right on par with the in-home voice assistant experience with a score of 7.42. But the best experience to date is that cloud-based voice assistant that is actually built into the infotainment system of the vehicle with a score over 8, an 8.08 in terms of satisfaction. And really what this tells us is that the fewer opportunities for friction, the better the experience. So when you think about phone projection or aftermarket devices, there's potential friction there with having to connect Bluetooth, potentially connecting wires, all of those things that can create those moments of friction and reduce satisfaction. Whereas the built-in voice assistant doesn't have those challenges. And of course, if we compare the cloud-based built-in voice assistant to that traditional in-vehicle voice recognition software, we see the biggest discrepancy from over an 8 with the cloud-based assistant to under a 6 on that satisfaction scale for that traditional in-vehicle voice recognition software, which we just heard a number of challenges there. So it's a nice overview of sort of how people are experiencing voice in the car today. And in fact, we see that over 2/3 of consumers are interested in having the same in-home voice assistant that they have on their next vehicle. And part of it is because of all of these positive things that we're seeing in terms of the actual experience, but also we asked consumers about why they wanted that, what was the benefit? And what we heard from them in the top 3 are, first, they felt like they would already know how to use this feature. And I think that's particularly powerful today where our vehicles have gotten more complex, more advanced, and a lot of times you get into a new car and there are a lot of things you don't know how to use yet and you have to learn. So having a feature that you already know how to use and maybe know and love already from the home is a great benefit to consumers. The second thing that they cited as a benefit was this consistent experience. When you think about consistency going from home to car and car to home, that is another great benefit. I mean, I'll tell you, even from my own experience, it's such a pleasure to be able to pull into my garage, in my car, and even if my kids want to finish listening to whatever song we're in, I can ask Alexa to pause, I can go into the house, and they can continue listening to the song. So we don't have to sit in the car and wait for the song to finish anymore, as an example, right? That consistency is really helpful. And then the third benefit that we heard from consumers is really about the fact that they felt that their preferences would already be known and be more adaptable. And this is around that personalization feature. So things that you've already trained that voice assistant to do in the home, you can then bring that into the car as well. So some wonderful benefits as seen by consumers. And in fact, that is the way that we look at this, the whole process from Amazon is we start with the consumer that you see there in the middle and think about how we can help solve the problems and make their whole day just a little bit better, easier, simpler, more enjoyable. And when you think about that, you can start from the very beginning. When you get up in the morning, you can ask Alexa, how the weather is, so you know how to dress. When you get into the vehicle, you can check on traffic, for example. When you get to the office, you can ask Alexa to start your meeting so she can continue to help you, throughout the day. And then either at the end of the day or even at the beginning of the day when you're on your drive, she can really help out by doing things like oh my gosh, I forgot to close the garage door, rather than going around the block, I can simply ask Alexa to connect to my smart garage and close my garage door. Or at the end of the day, if I'm coming home later than I had planned and I forgot to leave a light on for myself, I can simply ask Alexa to turn on a porch light or an interior light so I'm not coming home to the dark house, right? It's a complete experience that way for the customer. And of course, we asked customers, consumers, in that J.D. Power survey about what features they really wanted from that voice assistant in the car. And the important thing, I think, from this data is not the individual bars, although we can certainly talk about them, but this notion that they want to go well beyond car features. Yes, of course, they want the voice assistant to be able to help them with features in the car, things like driver warnings and vehicle controls and even vehicle education. But it goes well beyond that. They want support with navigation, right? That you can see at the top of the list there. They want to be entertained with that same voice assistant, musical entertainment, reading entertainment, whether that's a book or a podcast, you know, that kind of content. Towards the middle of the chart there, you see this automotive services, with 65% saying they wanted help from that voice assistant with automotive services, things like being able to find and pay for gas and parking, that sort of thing. And almost 60% said that they really want that voice assistant in the car to be able to help them with personal needs. Things like adding an item to a grocery list, checking on a calendar invite, or even connecting to the smart home devices, right? And the thing is, being able to do all of this with that voice assistant in the car is really what consumers are looking for. So at Amazon, we have focused on 4 key areas or domains specifically for the car, based on the content that we received both from the J.D. Power study, as well as what we've heard from our own customers. And so the 4 key areas are certainly entertainment, whether you're on a solo drive or in the car with family and friends, being able to be entertained is you know, something that we all like to be able to do in the car, and great to be able to do it with your voice. The second area is around communications. So being able to make a phone call, you know, while you're zipping down the highway, or if you're stuck in traffic, you know, being able to join that conference call if you're, you know, if you're not going to get to your location on time, all those kinds of things. The third area is really around navigation. And this is more than just getting from point A to point B, but also around local search. So imagine you're in an area that you are perhaps a bit unfamiliar, you're running low on gas, you can ask Alexa the question about, you know, find gas nearby, and then she can, you know, help direct you to locations that you choose, and then hand off those turn-by-turn navigation directions so that you can actually get there. And then the fourth area is really around what we call car control. And I want to talk about car control from 2 perspectives. One is when you're in the car and being able to do things simply with your voice, so you don't have to take your hands off the wheel or eyes off the road to you know, change a radio station, or you know, change the air vents or something like that, you know, the temperature. But also being able to precondition the vehicle before you even get into the car. So imagine here, the image here is, you know, on a cold day, we're in the middle of summer, nobody's dealing with this right now, but soon enough, winter will be upon us. And so being able to enjoy your cup of coffee at the breakfast table and ask Alexa to defrost your car, or set the cabin temperature to a nice, you know, 75, 80 degrees, so that it's warmed up and ready to go when you're ready to go, is also another. Now, all that being said, we also recognize the importance of being able to continue to use your voice even when you don't have great connectivity to the cloud, right? When you're in your car and on the go, sometimes you're in a place where the connection is a bit spotty. You could be out in a remote area, you could be between cell phone towers, or perhaps in an underground parking garage. But we've made available the ability to continue to use Alexa with what we call local voice control. So there are lots of capabilities that you can continue to use with Alexa, even when you don't have connectivity. And she just seamlessly will switch back and forth between the power of the cloud when it's available to that local voice control when necessary. And of course, going beyond the specific car features, we know that our customers want to have access to all of the tens of thousands of Alexa skills that are available out there. And you can bring all of those things into the car as well, whether that's music from your favorite streaming service, news from your preferred news outlet, connecting to those smart home devices, getting information, ordering that cup of coffee, right? All of these great things that developers have created to make this experience with voice even more useful and entertaining. And of course, when we think about this specifically from an automotive context, I wanted to share a few examples of skills that were specifically developed for the automotive use case. And I'll just go through these few that are here on the slide. And as I said, they're just examples. But we have skills from developers that help with things like roadside assistance from folks like Urgently. There are a number of parking skills available that help you find parking. It can help you pay for parking. There are even some skills that help you identify what the rules are in parking in large cities. So can I park on the east side of the street from these hours on certain days? You can actually ask Alexa those questions so that you know that you're parking in the right spot, and so you won't get a ticket. Of course, navigation, what 3 words, is a great skill that is sort of almost made for voice, because you just have to say those 3 words to help with that navigation rather than having to remember the exact street address and avenue versus drive and those kinds of challenges. And of course, being able to find gas is always a great use case, and there's skills out there for that. And in fact, speaking of gas, we actually made an announcement at CES last January about pay for gas, which we're super excited about. It's in working with ExxonMobil stations across the US. They have over 11,000 stations across the US, where you'll be able to pull up to the gas station and say, Alexa, pay for gas. And Alexa then confirms your location to make sure that she knows what gas station you are actually at. You then identify the pump number, and the payment piece gets taken care of. So you don't have to worry about card skimmers and credit cards and those kinds of things. For the weather, right? Again, in a cold environment, you can spend a little bit more time in your car before you get out to actually pump the gas, if you still have to pump the gas, at least today. Maybe we can solve for that at some point in the future. But also, when we think about the environment today and this notion of, I think many of us want to touch fewer things, this is also a great opportunity to have fewer touches on that gas pump by being able to simply use your voice. Now, I wanted to take a minute to talk about how you actually can get a service like Alexa into the vehicle. And I'm going to start on the right-hand side of the slide and move to the left. So one way to do it is through projection technology, where you actually have an app on your phone and project Alexa into the infotainment system of the vehicle. And so some of the automakers have chosen that route. The middle one there is really using an aftermarket device. And here, that image, I'm showing an example with our own Echo Auto, but there are lots of other devices that I'll talk about shortly, as lots of customer choice, many different ways of bringing Alexa into the car. But that's important for those vehicles that are older. We know that there are hundreds of millions of older vehicles on the car that may not have all the software and hardware capabilities to put in a cloud-based voice assistant into that infotainment system. And so an aftermarket device is a great solution for that. And then over on the left is an example of what we call our North Star experience, or that embedded experience. And that's where Alexa is fully embedded into the infotainment system of the vehicle. You don't need your phone. You don't need to worry about connecting to Bluetooth or anything else. She's there and available for you whenever you're out and on the road. And so with that, I thought it would be fun to take a look at an example from one of our partners to actually see how this works. This video will do a better job than I can do explaining it, so you can actually see some of that functionality. So let's take a quick look.
Alexa, change the interior lights to orange.
Color set to orange.
Alexa, open the garage door.
Okay.
Alexa, play my driving playlist.
Here is your driving playlist from Amazon Music.
Alexa, find me a romantic restaurant.
Here are a few restaurants you might like.
Alexa, navigate me to the first one.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I know I wish I had a Lamborghini in my garage. Unfortunately, I do not. I wanted to share with you as well that we have, many other brands have also integrated with Alexa. Here are the ones that we've announced thus far. The most recent announcement actually was with Nissan just a couple of weeks ago with their new Aria vehicle that's coming out, their all-electric vehicle. That'll be the first Nissan that has Alexa embedded into it. But you can see the range of brands that have integrated Alexa. And I will also say that it's not always just for brand new vehicles that are coming to market. As an example, GM recently, across all 4 of their brands, not only in their new vehicles, but back to their 2018 model years and newer, their customers can actually, through a simple over-the-air update, actually get Alexa into those vehicles as well. So we're very excited about that. Lots of different options and opportunities. Now, I also mentioned for those older vehicles that maybe don't have the capability to bring a voice assistant like Alexa into the infotainment system, there are lots of aftermarket options. So in addition to our own Echo Auto, we have a number of brands that we've worked with, everything from a simple phone charger that brings Alexa into the car, to a phone mount, to a dash camera, and even full aftermarket entertainment units that you can bring into the car and have installed. So lots of different choices, again, for customers to be able to bring Alexa into the car. Now, as we say at Amazon, it remains day one. We're always thinking about the future. And I did want to give you a little bit of a taste about where things are headed. In addition to all of the things that we continue to work on today, there are things that we know are important further into the future. So first, I wanted to mention what we call our Voice Interoperability Initiative. Some of you may have heard of this or be a part of it. We have over 65 brands that are part of this, including a number of automotive brands. And the idea behind this is really working together as an industry to solve some of the hard problems around multiple voice assistants in a single device. And when I say device, that's from anything from a smart speaker to a vehicle, right? Any place where you might have more than one voice assistant. Being able to create an experience that is seamless and easy for the customer is really important. And these are hard problems to solve. And as an industry, we need to come together and work on this. So we're very proud of this initiative, and more to come. It's still early days. We have a lot of work to do, but excited about where this is headed for customers. The other thing that I thought I would share is one last video that shows a little bit about what we're thinking of further into the future, where you can imagine a voice assistant being really useful and helpful for things like being more proactive and knowing a little bit more about your preferences, and being able to make suggestions and help you in your life, bringing additional entertainment into the vehicle, especially for passengers, or when we have an autonomous route, where we can actually take our hands off the wheel and eyes off the road to be able to do those things. So let me give you a little taste of this. We can take a look at this last video. Let's take a look.
Some of the other things that you can also see here is I can actually look at some of my smart home features and the status of my home. Look at how the thermostats are doing, how the lights are doing.
By the way, you typically order coffee about this time. Would you like me to order coffee when we get close?
Yes.
Okay, I will order it when we are close so it's hot when we arrive.
Great.
So in this case, we're using machine learning recommendations based on past behaviors to automate some of the features. So in this case, it was ordering coffee. Now, you'll notice it asked if we should order coffee. When we said yes, it's not going to order it right away. It's actually going to wait until we're about 5 minutes away, so it's hot and ready when we arrive. We're in manual driving mode right now, so the driver has to pay attention to the road. But I'm the passenger. I can actually enjoy some entertainment. So Alexa, play the Grand Tour on Fire TV.
Getting the Grand Tour from Prime Video.
Up front in the very lazy state.
So I'm able to watch TV, but if the driver looks over and tries to watch TV, you'll see that the system is tracking his gaze, and it'll actually pause the video to warn him to pay attention to the road.
Autonomous drive is available for the next 26 minutes. Do you need help on how to enable it?
Okay, there's so much more to this video, but I didn't want to take up any more time, today with this. But this was actually a demonstration that we shared during CES. You can actually see this live. But we did record a much longer video for this. And so if anybody wants to see it, I'm happy to provide the link afterwards, or maybe, Carla, I can send it to you. You can send it out to folks if they'd like to see it. So you can see what happens with that autonomous drive, et cetera. But it's really this notion of making that voice assistant, work for you and be super helpful and useful in your life. So with that, I will say thank you. And I'm actually, I think my email address is up there in case anybody has questions that they want to send that maybe we don't get to today. But with that, I think, Carla, I think I'm going to turn it over to you so we can do some Q&A, correct?
Yes, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I really liked the video and the Lamborghini. I just want to drive it.
Right.
Absolutely. So maybe you saw the speech that was given by Jim Farley today. And one of the most tweeted comments was Ford's key competitors, and Amazon was #1 on the list, which I found interesting because you just showed who your partners are.
Uh-huh. That is interesting.
I found it very interesting too. I thought maybe you'd have a thought about that. But when I looked at the data, that showed in-car systems versus cloud-based systems,
Yeah.
it really makes you wonder why there are in-car systems at all anymore. And for those of us that have an in-car system, quite frankly, I don't use it anymore because it never understands me. And especially if I'm asking for contacts or to call somebody. So you try to do that 3 or 4 times, then you're mad and you're trying to drive and then you grab your phone. So it's the worst situation. So the more we can get hands-free, clearly the better. So the work that you're doing is very much appreciated for the automotive industry and especially for safety. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing in Alexa Auto right now? Is it language recognition? Is it accents? Is it idiot? I don't know. What are the biggest issues that you're facing?
So, I think I'm gonna take this question in a couple of different ways. Maybe first I'll talk a little bit about what the challenges are specifically in the automotive context, and then I'd actually like to talk about the voice technology more broadly that I think is also a challenge. There's some things that we're working on and challenges that we need to face. So specifically in the automotive context, we wanted to make sure that Alexa would really work with all different kinds of vehicles, no matter what hardware or software they had in the vehicle. And it certainly would have been easier, technologically easier, for us to build a full operating system, and ask automakers to actually replace the existing system with our system. But we didn't really think that that was the right approach for automakers or their customers, frankly. And so we approached this in a different way, really. We built out what we call our Alexa Auto SDK, or Software Development Kit, which allows automakers and suppliers to add Alexa into their existing infotainment systems. It's designed to work with all the major operating systems, so there are no issues there. And the reason for this is a couple. One, from the automaker perspective, right? It allows automakers to tweak and customize the experience to really suit their brand. And then from the customer perspective, it allows Alexa to feel like an extension of that in-cabin experience that the automakers have built, with their suppliers. And so we think it's a win-win, from the customer perspective and the automaker perspective. Of course, there are challenges, right? Every time we release new functionality, we have to make sure it works on all those different systems. And so it is a challenge, certainly, for us that we continue to wrestle with. But when we think about sort of more broadly the voice industry and voice technology, we've been working, I mentioned some of the things with that forward-looking video, thinking about how we improve artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, those kinds of things to really bolster the experience with voice. And so maybe I can actually mention 3 different things around how AI can help support things like memory, multi-agents, and contextual reasoning. Because I think those are hard problems that we need to solve both in the car and well beyond the car, in the home and anywhere else where you would use voice technology. So first with memory, we showed you in the video that Alexa could sort of remember that maybe you typically order coffee and ask you if you want to order coffee. So that notion of being able to remember a specific habit or a specific conversation that you had with Alexa, sometime in the past, like a person would, can be really powerful. Imagine if she remembered your food order so that you didn't have to repeat it the next time, or even help remind you that you missed an appointment that you need to reschedule, right? All those kinds of things where, these are problems that are, again, hard to solve, but could be really, really powerful for the customer. In terms of multi-agents, I mentioned the Voice Interoperability Initiative, and we really think that it's important to have AI be able to seamlessly route responses to the best voice assistant to complete a task. So it's a great experience for customers, no matter who built it. Maybe it's Alexa, but it doesn't have to be. It could be the automaker's assistant or another assistant altogether. We want to make sure that we build things so that, and these systems, so that the customers can really have that best experience. And it's, it's a challenge right now to figure that out. And then finally, context. Certainly context is perhaps particularly important when you're in the vehicle. But you can think about context being important and contextual reasoning being important, no matter where you are, to help improve that customer experience. So I'll say in the not too distant future, Alexa will actually be able to complete more complex tasks that help to seamlessly transition between skills. So you could be asking, a question in one skill, and then the next question requires you to dynamically transition to another skill, but preserve that context so that Alexa would, for instance, know that you were still in the car, those sorts of things, and know what you had just talked about. Wouldn't that be fabulous? So these are all, hard problems that we're working to solve. And the truth is, we're really excited about, being able to provide these tools to the industry and to developers to help actually democratize conversational AI, to continue to create these great skills and have a great customer experience.
So you mentioned earlier about the seamless connection between the home then to the car and being able to, keep your music or I'm assuming other features and as other well.
Things. Yes.
But there's probably a difference between what you can do at home with Alexa and what you can do in the car. And what are some of those significant differences? And what are those things that you're trying to seamlessly integrate? In my case, the other day, I was driving to the store and realized, oh, I'm supposed to make such and such. I don't know the recipe. I know I need to pick up stuff for it. It would have been great to be able to say, hey, tell me that recipe and, and put it on my list before I go into the store, right? Absolutely. So are we going to eventually get to that ease of life? I'll put it that way.
You can do many of those things right now, actually. Isn't that great? Yes. So for sure, there are lots of things that people want to be able to do in wherever they are, right? This notion that our lives change dramatically once we sit down in the car is false, right? It's the same life we're living whether we're in the car or out of the car, and we want to be able to connect all those things. And so, I think first and foremost, as you said, Carla, this connection between home to car and car to home is really important. You know, whether it's being able to pause that song and come back in, or listen to the next chapter in an Audible book, right? All those entertainment functions, but also being able to add things to a grocery list and have it available for you, you know, in your app when you walk into the grocery store, right? All those things, which I'll be honest, we do that at home all the time. You know, my kids can add things to the grocery list through Alexa, and then it's available when my husband and I head out to the grocery store, which is great. Or when I think of, you know, oh, I need to add that item to my grocery list while I'm driving, rather than having to try and remember it, I can simply ask Alexa to add that immediately right there. So you got that right. That being said, there are some differences. Certainly, you have to take that context of being inside the vehicle and driving the car, particularly into account. And so there are really, I'll talk about two things here that are different experiences, because we do try and, you know, maintain as much consistency as possible, because that is what customers expect. But we, you know, we do want to think about what makes sense when you're in the vehicle. So first, when you're in the vehicle, the Alexa actually typically responds with a shorter, simpler response to whatever question you may have asked or whatever information you asked for, which hopefully then really makes it easier for the driver to get the key information he or she is looking for, select something, and then move on, right? So they can continue to pay attention to their drive. So that's a really important piece. And we've actually made that available not only through the tools that we've provided, but also for developers. So as they build their skills, they can also utilize those shorter responses when somebody's using their skill in an automotive endpoint, if you will. The second thing I think is really important is because we have so many great skills, and some of them require the customer to connect an account, for instance. So if I want to use Alexa for like SiriusXM, I have a SiriusXM account, I need to connect it to my account. And if I haven't done that, and the first time I try and do it, I'm in the car driving, typically if you're at home, Alexa would say to you, you know, go to your app or your account and go ahead and make that connection. When I'm driving, when I'm in my car, Alexa responds differently by actually offering to send that request to my account so that when it's safe to do so, I can either pull it up on my phone in my app, or I can sit down in front of a computer and log into my Amazon account and make that connection later. But she'll send that notification so that I'm reminded to do that later. So those are the things that we really do that are a little bit different in the car than at home. But primarily, you know, first and foremost, we try to have that very consistent experience.
Yeah, I'm really waiting for Alexa to tell me before I'm halfway to the store that I've forgotten my reusable bags. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, just a little reminder, because I cannot tell you the number of times I've gotten halfway there and realized that, or in Michigan, we have to return our bottles, and I'm famous for forgetting those too.
There you go. There you go. So you could set a routine for that and get her to remind you. I love it.
You showed us earlier, you know, the primary functions that people like to use voice assist in the car, and navigation was number one. And I'm curious, you know, even in that vein, what they use most often. And one of the things personally I find very frustrating is the POI. When I say I want to go to a specific place, and sometimes I even give the city and the state still, and I'm not talking about Amazon system, but the one I try to use has no clue. And, you know, I know the place is there, I've been there many times, but it can't find it. So I'm curious, you know, in navigation, is there certain things that are used most often? Maybe it's routing, I don't know. Maybe it's POI. And, you know, which of those elements maybe you want to have the highest improvement because, you know, there's a certain level of dissatisfaction.
Yeah, you know, so people definitely use navigation as a huge use case, you know, as is entertainment, right? Especially playing music, right? We see a ton of that. Which makes sense, right? Those are things you want to be able to do in the car. And, you know, really, let me answer your first question and then I'll talk a little bit more about navigation. But, you know, the four areas that I mentioned really are the top areas, right? Navigation, entertainment, communications as well as those car control features when you have Alexa embedded into the infotainment system and can do those car control features. And that's why we focused on those, and that is what we see people using most often. Around navigation specifically, certainly, local search is really important, and we continue to make improvements to that. As I think, those things change all the time. One of the things that we saw happen actually recently were, lots of questions around testing centers for COVID testing. And so we spun up really quickly, to be able to make sure that we had the latest information available through Alexa for those kinds of things, as well as up-to-date information about the hours of locations being open, right, as things have changed. So, all of those kinds of things around navigation, not just find me this location, but other things around navigation are also really important, especially today, perhaps even more so than it used to be. And that is actually the power of having voice assistant in the car that's connected to the cloud, right? All those things that change dynamically can also get updated on that regular basis because you are connecting to the cloud to get that information. So it's always up to date. And those things are really important. I will also say, so that's the navigation piece. The other one of the other top areas is around entertainment. And I thought it would be fun. I already shared with you that I have, a teenager and a tween, but this notion of expanding entertainment in the vehicle, I think, is also kind of powerful, especially maybe for parents. And I don't know that we talk about this enough. But one of our favorite games to play, in our family is a game called Song Quiz, which is listening to a little clip of music and then having to identify the title and the artist, and we, of course, in our family know we have strengths in different decades of music, as you might imagine. But the beauty of the game is that it creates this communal experience in the car. When I was growing up, I used to talk to my parents in the car, and nowadays kids often will sit in the back seat and do something on their own devices, and they don't want to talk to mom and dad. But having Alexa in the car creates this fun way, this communal experience that is great. The kids want to interact with Alexa, and then they end up talking to us as well, and we're laughing and having fun and talking to each other. And it's just, I can't say enough about that as a parent, about how great that has been and how much it has changed our experience in the car. So that's another feature, not necessarily Song Quiz in particular, but entertainment. Something
that's awesome. I never thought about that. When I had kids, we bunked them with a video in the back seat. That was our way of entertaining them, but it certainly wasn't a family event by far. Right. What about shopping? I'm an Amazon Prime crazy person. So are you seeing a lot of people using Alexa for that purpose while they're driving? Hey, I remember I need this. Give me some options. Can you do that even? And can you pay for it?
So I will be honest with you. I do not know the numbers off the top of my head about actual shopping. But definitely we've seen people adding things to lists. This actually gets back to one of those differences when you're at home and when you're in the car. When you think about shopping, reordering something is easy, right? So if you just say like, oh, I need those batteries again, or I need the toilet paper, whatever it is that you need, that could be a really easy thing to ask Alexa to do when you're driving. But if you are, shopping for something where you might want choices, that's another place where you can ask Alexa for something and she will say, do you want me to send that to you, as a reminder for later when it's safe to do so. And then you can look at some of those options. And so that definitely, we see people doing that. I know I've used it myself, right? Because again, you're driving and something reminds you, oh, I forgot I need to buy whatever it is, running low on something, or your teenager in the back seat says, oh, I need new shoes before
within 3 hours.
Exactly.
Or Sunday night at 9 o'clock is when you usually get that. Yep.
You know it.
So I have one final question for you, and that's, what new features are coming that you're really excited about?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Gosh. Okay. So admittedly, I'm super excited about the longer term stuff that we're working on. I think it's really fabulous, but I think the question is really about things that are nearer term. So We actually released the newest version of our Alexa Auto SDK just last week. And so there are a couple of features, there are a whole bunch of features that came with that, but there are a couple that I'm super excited about. One of them is around car control. So specifically with car control around zones. So thinking about where in the car you are. You know, before you could use your voice and ask Alexa to do things like, you know, put the windows up or down, or, you know, change the temperature or turn on a seat heater, right? Those different kinds of car control features. But now you have the capability to actually identify which seat heater, or which window. So you can say things like, Alexa, set the rear passenger seat heater to medium, and she'll do it. Or Alexa, roll down the front passenger window, you know, which is so great. So you're not, you know, fumbling with which window you're trying to get down, you know, things like that. So I'm really excited about that capability with the latest release of the SDK. The other one, and you actually, Carla, mentioned languages earlier. And so another thing that got released last week is what we call dynamic language switching, which I think is super cool, especially for bilingual households or communities in the car. And what this does, it actually allows you to talk to Alexa in 2 different languages, and she will respond in whatever language you spoke to her. So in the US, for example, the immediate release is English and Spanish. So whichever language I use, she will respond to me in that language. In India, we've done this with English and Hindi. And in Canada, we've done this with English and French. So, you know, and it's just the start, but super excited about that. Again, it makes Alexa that much more natural and conversational, which I love. And then I'll just mention one other thing, and that is around skills, because, you know, I mentioned some of those automotive specific skills in the presentation. I gave you some examples that were US specific skills that I mentioned, but we've also seen just in the last couple of months, additional expansion of a number of skills, specifically the parking skills throughout the European market, including pay by phone and Ring Go. And those are just a couple of examples, but you know, the fact that the developers are now expanding those automotive skills because they're seeing usage in the US now into Europe and other places globally, just makes that experience that much better for our customers throughout the globe. And that excites me. I love it.
Absolutely. Well, what a great way to close out our day today with, you know, really what is important to customers these days and what automotive companies need to seriously be thinking about in this seamless integration of life. We'll just call it that.
Yes.
Really appreciate your time. Great presentation. Really enjoyed it. Thank you to the audience.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes.
And thank you to our sponsor as well. See you tomorrow.